Hi there. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Beyond the Frame. I'm your host, Ryan Vanderhei, and I've learned some of my most valuable life lessons from my favorite TV shows and movies. Sure, these works of art entertain us, offer us an escape, and even tap into our emotions. But there's one E that's missing.
That's educational. If viewed from a different perspective, these stories and their characters can help us to learn and develop as human beings. I'm your co-host, Joe Parente, and it's our mission with this podcast to share these unique perspectives with you so you can grow from the show.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be. What a wonderful world it would be.
The topic of today's discussion is conclave and the dangers that power can bring.
Okay.
As always, there'll be some spoilers ahead, so you're forewarned. If you haven't seen the movie, that is coming. And if you could please leave us a like, a rating, or a review wherever it is you listen, as it really helps the show. Shall we begin?
Let's do that.
The answers that you're looking for are lying just beyond the frame.
So, Joe,
So Ryan,
I've got a question for you.
yeah, I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it.
Do you think that someone can seek power for purely good intentions?
Ooh, excellent question. I guess it would depend on how you define good intentions.
That's fair.
You know, if you're, because think about like politicians might think that they're doing this for good intentions, but other people would interpret that as not. They might not like your agenda of good intentions.
Sure, your good intentions don't line up with their good intentions.
Correct. Correct. But and I think that's a really interesting question within the context of this movie,
This film specifically, yeah.
because you do get to look at least a little bit at motivations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this movie does a great job of setting up multiple characters who come at this from different angles.
Yep.
We don't have a, unidirectional path to what this question is asking. It's more, we get, I don't know, maybe 5 different examples
Yeah,
in this.
we do.
We'll get into talking about
Yeah.
each of those individually, but I just really, this film made me think about what does power entail? What comes with it? And can you seek it for purely good intentions? I feel like for me, certainly the people in this film, the characters in this film, each of them had a little bit of reason. And it doesn't necessarily mean that reason was invalid. It just means that it carried a different weight to it. It carried a different...
Flavor or tenor. Yeah.
Exactly.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that if someone's seeking power for good reasons, that makes it necessarily selfless?
I don't think that being selfless and pursuing good intentions are
Mutually exclusive.
correct.
Okay.
I think that it's muddy water. There's a lot of cloudy air there. There's things you can come at something with good intentions. Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question to ask. That's a perfect question.
Because I think that who's seeking power is selfless. That one, I bet I could never define. So I couldn't think of anybody.
Sure. Well, let's start breaking down some of the characters in the movie, shall we?
Yeah, to look at their motivation.
So, to set the tone here, this movie is called Conclave, and it's about when a pope passes, then they have to choose and select a new pope. And so they shut the doors. Everybody's all the cardinals come. They all stay in. Somebody is appointed to oversee the election, and then they all vote. And then until you have, what was it? I don't believe it was
2/3.
2/3.
Yeah.
So until you have 2/3 vote, you just keep going. You just
Yep.
stay there for as long as it takes
Yep.
until you get the 2/3.
Yep.
And they send is it the gray smoke they haven't done it yet, And then
Correct.
the white smoke is when they have.
Correct.
So we enter into this film, the Pope has died, and we meet these cardinals who are by his side, who then now realize, okay, we have to choose. And then we get introduced to a lot of different cardinals who have different agendas, and they have different perspectives, and they have different motives for wanting the papacy, I believe, as they refer to it as.
Yes.
So let's talk first about one of my favorite characters in the film, Bellini.
Okay.
He's played by the magnificent Stanley Tucci,
Yeah.
right?
He is fantastic.
So who was wonderful in this role. But Bellini, as soon as they realize that the Pope has passed and they all kind of huddle around, it's that he is the favorite. There's that scene where him and is it Cardinal Lawrence is
He's
Ralph
the one
Fiennes'
overseeing-
character. Yeah.
Yes.
They have sort of a little interaction. Oh, you're the favorite. The papers seem to think so.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, but what if I don't want it? You know?
Mm-hmm.
What did you feel about, how did you feel about Bellini, his character, and his motivations?
I didn't entirely believe that he didn't want it.
Okay.
So when he said that, I was like, I wonder if that's true. Conversely, I actually believed when Lawrence said he didn't want it.
Okay. Interesting.
And Tremblay, who was fantastic, also John Lithgow, confronts him and says that, your ambition's showing, so to speak.
Sure.
And I didn't know if I thought he was almost talking to himself. I actually
Tremblay?
I didn't even think he was talking to Lawrence in a sense, because
Sure.
I didn't see that ambition at all. We
Yeah.
already knew that he wanted to resign.
Agreed, yeah.
So
For the audience, obviously, hopefully you've seen it, but he starts to have, Lawrence tells us later in the film that he's starting to have doubts about his faith. And so he feels that makes him unfit to be the Pope, which makes sense. Obviously, if you want somebody to be at the head of the Catholic Church, you would at least hope that this person is solidified in their beliefs and their faith. And I agree with you where when Tremblay was talking to him and saying these things, I didn't believe it. I thought that Lawrence truly didn't want it until we get that scene later in the film when him and Bellini are outside and he says, tell me you haven't thought of your name yet. And then at the end of the conversation, Lawrence says, it'd be John. So I think what that scene tells us is that no matter who you are, no matter what your intentions are, if you're a cardinal, you've at least thought about it once or twice.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's a natural human instinct.
That's the only place you go in your career.
Yeah,
If you're a cardinal.
there's nowhere else.
Yeah.
That's it.
There's one last promotion left.
Yeah, that's the pinnacle.
Only one different set of robes left for you.
Sure.
And hats and rings and shoes.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I was surprised to hear Lawrence say that in that scene that he had thought about it.
I actually thought, I was surprised to hear that he'd thought about it. I felt that he wasn't starting to get drunk with power. Like, I would be Pope.
Yeah.
I didn't get that feeling.
Like some of the others were.
It was more about, we have a particular perspective of what we want the papacy to be. And if it's not going to be you, and if it can't be him, then okay, I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
But was he fighting it? No.
Sure.
He was not fighting
He wasn't fighting
He
against
was not
it.
fighting it.
I did find it interesting, though, how Lawrence's character starts to go around and sort of campaign against himself. He has the conversation with, I believe it is, who is it? The guy who it ends up being in the end, Benitez. He sits him down and he says, why are you voting for me? Like, don't. I don't want this. We can't. Like, Bellini starts to get upset with him, right? With Lawrence saying, you're taking all these votes. because they desperately don't want, was it Tedesco,
Correct.
to become the Pope, because in their mind, he's very conservative. He's going to turn back all the progress they've made. He's going to steer them into the wrong direction. Boy, there are some parallels to our current state of...
More than one. Yes, very true.
We'll get to that. Let's stay here where this meeting of the two parties, if you will, a lot of them agree that they're trying to steer the papacy and everything into the right direction, and that Tedesco is going to take back all of that progress.
Roll back the clock, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then that's why Bellini comes the favorite. Lawrence says he doesn't want it. It just becomes this convoluted meeting of the minds, if you will, of these cardinals who all kind of have their different opinions. How did you feel about Tedesco's character and his attitude towards the papacy, towards the conclave? Because he was kind of a snarky guy.
He was definitely a snarky guy. He was also the guy that felt that they should kind of go after Muslims,
Right.
which allowed Benitez to shine.
Yeah.
So I think he was his own foil in that sense.
Sure.
To me, it might have been a little heavy-handed making him, but you have to have tension.
Sure.
To have a pope that wants to overturn Vatican II, which is something I believe, I was raised Catholic, but I don't remember all this stuff. I believe it was Pope Paul. Whoever saw Vatican II, what they did was that's when they stopped doing Mass in Latin.
Okay.
And when you stopped doing the Mass in Latin and you did it in the native languages of wherever you were, it opened it up to more and more people. There was like a more egalitarian sense.
Okay.
It made it more accessible.
Yeah.
And it sounded like Tedesco was just a purist in a certain sense, or just he wanted to, it sounds like he just wanted to turn back the clock.
Yeah.
I just found him to be a little heavy-handed. I thought as a character he was fantastic. I enjoyed him.
Yeah. He was a great
enjoyed his
actor, too.
snarkiness. Great actor.
Yeah. Fantastic role.
So I loved having him in there as that role. I don't know how realistic that is either, to have a cardinal in today's world who wants to turn things back that far. But from what we've seen from our current political environment, I shouldn't be surprised if there are many cardinals
Sure.
who think that way.
He wanted to make the Catholics great again. Essentially. So I want to talk about one of my favorite lines from the film here. And early on in the film, and maybe you can help me out here because I couldn't figure out who said it. Early in the film, Bellini says that no sane man would want the papacy. And then later on, I forget who says this, but later on in the film, somebody says, the men who are dangerous are the ones who do want it. That's where we come back to that question we asked at the beginning.
Yep.
Can you seek power for purely good intentions? This person seems to think not. The men who are dangerous are the ones who do want it.
Yeah. In that type of a position, that makes sense. I think it'd be different if we're talking about running Microsoft.
Okay.
Because that's not about. There is such a different set of ideals and goals for an organization, for the church, than there is for a software firm.
Okay. Fair.
And so, I think that Catholics like to think of priests as being kind of humble servants of God. And if you're really ambitious and you want the power and you want to have the say, is that really being a humble servant of God? Isn't that making your own ambition, your own self-interests more important than the collective greater good?
Wow. That's a fair point to make.
So in that sense, that completely makes sense to me. No sane man would want it too. I mean, just to me, that's about being in any position of responsibility, of
Yeah.
such great responsibility.
Yeah.
Who'd want to be president?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I can't imagine the
Just
stress.
running for any kind of public office. Your life is going to be ripped apart
Yeah,
and
you're
scrutinized.
Yeah.
So what kind of people are attracted to these forums, to these different types of environments?
Yeah.
And for me, again, as someone who was raised Catholic, it was fascinating to see the conclave, because I was raised thinking this, kind of learning that it's a mystical kind of thing, that it's a mystery, that we don't get to see what's going on in the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
And so, wow, here's a movie about the kitchen.
Yeah.
That is what it is.
You are inside.
You are inside, you're seeing the chefs, you're seeing the cooking, and
Yeah.
you got to see how very unbelievably human it is.
Yeah, you're a fly on the wall.
Yeah, and I loved that about this movie. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot to and great, absolutely great what you said. There's a lot to take away from that. I think, and listen, we're not a political podcast. We're not going to
No, we're
talk too
not.
much about this, but
But
when I was watching the movie, I think, my girlfriend was there, and I think I turned to her at the time and I said something too about, like, man, boy, is there a lot of parallels to politics and to what is happening in our current country. And it almost felt like there were a couple of lines or a couple of jabs that were funny, that were kind of poking. I forget what it was. Do you remember when they're in the stairwell?
and
And
that was Bellini and Lawrence
and
in the
Lawrence
stairwell?
and someone else.
Yeah.
And they're talking about something. I don't remember what the line was that they said, but it was so poignant to what is happening today. It made me laugh because I was like, oh boy, that's exactly what's happening in today's world. You talked about who the hell would want to be president? It's true. And what kind of ambition does it take to want to take on that role? To want to be the head of anything, as you spoke about, to want to be in a position of a massive responsibility. And what other position on earth could you have more responsibility, say, than the President of the United States of America? So the pressure, the stress, the flying here and there, the work, the hours, everything is just so, to me, tumultuous. And so
Agree.
for someone to actively say to themselves, this is what I want, and I desire this, I am going after it. Wouldn't we all want a president who doesn't want it?
Yes.
Wouldn't we all want that?
I would.
Certainly.
I guess you do too.
I guess I shouldn't say wouldn't we all. I
Right.
don't want to,
Right.
make a generalization here, but
But you also think about the strange, like, not strange, but it's a really broad skill set, and one that it requires. And one of the skill sets that being an effective leader is, particularly in the church, you have to be a great communicator. You have to be willing and able to get up in front of people and say things that stirs them, stirs their hearts, their minds.
yeah.
And in that sense, you got to be really okay with the spotlight.
Yeah.
And in that sense, you might not be a completely selfless, or, you might not be the kind of person who absolutely doesn't want the job. There's
Sure.
something about your skill set that really will match this.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to use your skill set, and you want to be able to exercise what it is that you do well naturally. And it might be in a role like that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree
You look
more.
like you were going to say something.
No, I wanted to trace back here. We're going to stay in a comparison here between politics and what we saw in the movie, but something more specific. So we see, I'll set this up by saying, in our current political landscape, and for as long as I can remember, when it starts to get close to election time, you're not seeing a lot of advertisements and commercials that are, here's what I plan to do when I'm in office. I want to change this. I want to enact this. I'm going to fight for this and that.
No.
you see a lot of smearing. You see a lot of attacks. You see a lot of trying to bring the other person down. So a lot of negativity. And in the film, Tremblay's character, we find out later on, brought the
the Nigerian
nun who the
Adeyemi
had an affair out of wedlock with, and had
it
this,
most certainly had to be out of wedlock.
and had this child, and he specifically goes out before and brings her there because he knows that Adeyemi was a favorite. He was someone that a lot of the cardinals saw could be the next pope, and so he's thinking to himself, there's my challenger.
Exactly.
There's my opponent. So instead of, here's what I'll do, here's what, how I'll be a good pope, it's, let me try and derail. And boy, did he ever. That's all it took. All it took was that kind of a rumor. And he has that line. You know how rumor spreads. That's all it took for Adeyemi's campaign to be completely derailed.
For sure.
Why do you think is it more effective to approach these things with negativity and attack than to promote positivity and how you're going to offer a change? What do you think it is about that?
What do I think it is about? Like, why does that happen, particularly in the last lap, if you will?
Yes. Why is that the focus?
Hard for me to answer because that kind of thing doesn't appeal to me personally.
Me either.
So, because that to me is where it just starts to get ugly.
Yeah.
And it actually shows me if someone that if it were an election, someone that, candidates I was looking at, if I saw my candidate simply going after the other candidate, and particularly if it's ad hominem and it's unsubstantiated, I would not vote for that particular candidate.
Okay.
So why do people do that? I think, I don't know, you've got to be a certain type of personality to be in that arena again. And so you might feel that you have to viciously take down the other person and show that they are so horrible to get people to think, I would never vote for that person, and make yourself the alternative rather than build yourself up as to why you are the right candidate.
Rather than the voice of the citizen saying, I want to vote for you. I will vote against the other.
So that's what,
And that's pretty powerful. It seems that, look, the people that are putting together these campaigns, the staff is in the thousands. It's not themselves going out and executing everything. This is a calculated. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't effective.
Absolutely true.
These are very intelligent people that are putting this together. So there's a reason why.
Why do you think?
I think that people respond to negativity. I think we see that with social media. I think that look at the news. What gets hits? What gets clicks?
Yeah.
Is it woman saves 2 in a house fire?
Right.
Or is it a plane crash killed 12? And you're like, whoa, what happened there? Right. Negativity gets clicks. Negativity gets a reaction. And I think that, look, these people are smart. They're aware of that. And they've done all the research and calculated it. And so it's more effective for them to put the money into a negative space than it is to a positive.
For sure.
Let's kill that there. Let's stop talking about politics.
Okay.
We're not a politics podcast.
It's true.
Let's get back to the film. Let's get back to Conclave. Tremblay's character, from the very beginning, I felt something's off. Because we learned that he was the last person to see him. I thought he might have killed him.
I know, I thought that too.
When we first meet, he's like, oh, the last meeting was with him. It was kind of ominous. And I'm going, I don't know about that.
Exactly.
And then throughout, the secrets start coming unraveled. You start to see more and more and more. And then you later learn that he brought the person. And so certainly his intentions were not pure.
Oh, God,
His
no.
intentions were not coming from a good place. He wanted it because he wanted the power. He
That's
wanted
right. Yep.
the lights, the spotlight.
Yep.
He wanted to
The
be
big chair.
the guy.
Yep.
And
For sure.
boy, did it show through.
It did.
Just his mannerisms, the way he spoke to people, trying to turn it around on Cardinal Lawrence when he approached him about it. Whenever you come at somebody with something and they try and turn it around on you,
Yeah.
the emotional manipulation,
For sure.
that's somebody who you can't trust. You don't
No.
want in a position of power.
No, and he's a cardinal.
Yeah, he's
You know?
already.
It's fascinating. He's
Yeah.
gone pretty darn high up.
Yeah, he's pretty high up
in
there.
the church, and you get to see what a nefarious mofo he was.
And yeah, it makes you wonder: has he been like that all along?
I think absolutely. Do you think someone becomes that at a certain point?
I do think it's entirely possible. I think that I think it's possible for someone to happen into a circumstance, find themselves there, and then realize, ooh, I kind of like this. I kind of like the power. I kind of like
Yeah.
the attention. I kind of like that people come up to me and I'm the
Yeah.
guy. I kind of like that,
Yeah.
actually. You realize through experience. I don't know. Something about this is.
Yeah, for sure. I think
With him, I'm not so sure. It
exactly,
happened
because
that way.
to do what he did, to have that Nigerian nun flown in, that is so diabolical and underhanded
That's the word I
and
had.
calculating
Yeah.
that I don't think he. See, I just think that's probably maybe part of what got him where he is.
Sure.
And he's been successfully doing that. And so why wouldn't he keep doing that?
Absolutely.
That was the impression I got of his character.
I couldn't agree more.
Um,
And I want to talk about Cardinal Lawrence Tremblay and their sort of interaction more.
sure.
But why don't we do a bad guy break?
Let's do a bad guy break.
This was a fun one
Okay.
to figure out, because there's a lot of examples out there of people. We like to write about this. We like to create stories about people who are hungry for power.
Mm.
I think because it does reflect a lot of personal experiences, and it does reflect how people interact in the real world, especially in, we're such a society that kind of relies on that. So I think it comes through in the art. And so I chose one of my favorite characters from one of my favorite movies of all time. Okay? So again, as always, I'm going to give you 4 hints, and I changed one of them. So
Okay.
instead of, I'm going to give you the medium, but I'm not, that's not a hint anymore. I'm going to give you the setting.
That might help because I'm batting about
That's a
150.
little bit better.
So
Yeah. We got to get you on base here.
please, man, I need a hit.
So the year
Okay.
is 2007.
Okay.
This is the year that the movie came out. This film came out in 2007.
Okay.
The genre
Yeah.
is a historical drama.
Okay.
Historical drama. The setting is 1902 Western United States. Are we?
Well, I figured it was a Western.
1902 Western U.S. It's sort of a modern.
Specific.
It's a modern Western.
1902. It is very. Yes.
2007. Before the actor. Be
Okay.
ready for him.
God, I'm gonna swing and miss. aren't I?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh wow. Oh, Oh. So it's not New York.
No, not
It's in
Gangs
the
of New York.
Western U.S.
It's in Western U.S. 1902. Historical drama.
I had to have seen it. Okay.
I hope you did.
I just feel like such a dunce when we do these.
3, 2,
Shoot.
1. This is
Sorry.
Daniel Plainview, who is the oil tycoon from There Will Be Blood.
Of course. That was brilliant. I
Have you
loved
seen
it.
that movie?
Yes, I have.
Oh, thank God.
I haven't seen it since 2007.
We're gonna turn the camera
no, no.
off. We're gonna turn around, and we were gonna throw up the projector. and we were gonna
that's
watch it.
embarrassing.
Man, what a
Yeah, that movie's amazing.
character that just sucks you in.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I think his performance, Daniel Day-Lewis' performance, as Daniel Plainview in that is one of my favorite performances I've ever seen in film, which he went on later to win the Oscar for. But I've never been so engrossed. I've never been so pulled in. There's no other way to describe it. I was mesmerized by watching this person pursue more and more and more power. He never could get enough. It was never enough. And he was willing to push away and step on anyone in his path to get to what he wanted. And I think I chose him specifically because what a parallel to not only our current political landscape, but the people in the film, the characters in Conclave, who some are seeking that power. The lengths. This film does a really good job at portraying the lengths at which people can go to in order to obtain what it is that they want. And so in that movie, we kind of watch him make decisions that your brain can't really comprehend.
Because they're so ruthless.
Yeah, to the lack of empathy, the lack of respect or thought or consideration of anybody other than yourself is astounding. And I have a theory that a capitalist society favors that.
It sure does.
I think as long as we need things get more expensive, we need more money to survive, you have to listen to survival instincts, man. We're not on the plains of Africa now running away from bears and tigers. We're in our apartments and in our houses. We're going to the office and we're trying to make enough money to survive. And that's going to create a lot of people who want more.
Gordon Gekko said, greed is good.
Yeah. This movie, man, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend. But I
need to see it again.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
And I was going to say the ending, but I don't want to give away too much.
Yeah, please do.
Because I want people to watch it.
Yeah.
It's a slow burn, but it brings us back to Conclave and the question we asked at the beginning of the film, these characters, the Tremblays, even the Adeyemis, to Tedesco, Lawrence, Bellini, for someone to want the power.
So then why did Benitez end up with it?
This is a good question. So in my understanding of the way the film played out and how it was written, which I believe is based on a novel.
Yes.
The right guy ended up as the Pope. The right person ended up as the Pope because it's the person that didn't want it. It's the person that, at least from what I was led to believe through the course of the film. I can't obviously project, but I'm not in his mind. But from what I saw and from what I heard, the right person ended up because he had no involvement. He came in at the last second. We're first introduced to him as,
True.
Oh, it must be what does Lawrence say? It must be a traitor, or it must be an informant, or whatever.
Right.
Whatever he
Exactly.
says, that word that he uses. Like, this can't be, I've never heard about, nobody's
Right.
ever heard about this guy.
An
So-
imposter. Of
An
sort.
imposter
Yeah.
is what he said. So, by all means, he would be the last person that you would suspect to be the Pope, which I think this movie is teaching us is the exact person that you want. How did you feel about it?
I felt the same. I don't know that he didn't want it, but he didn't seek it. Because he definitely didn't turn it down.
And that's an important difference.
Very important distinction. Yeah.
You can want something, but if you're not actively seeking it out, that's an important point.
Because the way he spoke out, and this is spoiler. We've already completely decimated the movie for you if you haven't seen it. But after the terrorist attack, and Tedesco really says, we need to go after the Muslims.
Yeah.
And Benitez gives that speech. He definitely flexed a particular muscle that he's got. He showed that he could be the right guy at the right time. He showed that he could be the voice of reason. He showed that he could keep a cool head, and he showed that he could keep like the spirit of what the church is supposed to be.
Right.
Where Tedesco showed himself to be more bellicose, and this is a fight. We need to go after them.
This is a war, yeah.
So in that sense, did the right person end up with it? I think that was your question.
Yeah.
If this is what you want for the church to be an institution that is more about understanding where others are coming from and coming to agreements from that perspective rather than trying to fight them, then absolutely he was. And I thought it was fascinating that after he did that, the next vote,
Yeah.
he was in.
Yeah. That's all it took was that moment.
Exactly. And I think the fact that he appealed to that many cardinals said an awful lot. I was waiting to see in that scene if Lawrence was going to say something after him. Because what Benitez said really made the room go quiet.
Right.
And then the camera went to Lawrence, who didn't say a thing.
Yeah, and you're kind of waiting. You're anticipating. You're expecting.
And in retrospect, I thought if he really, after that scene ended, then we see Benitez gets it. I thought that was his opportunity to say something. But what was said was already the cherry on the top of whatever. It was, what do you add to that? I think if he had been able to add something to it, who knows? The vote might have turned out differently.
Interesting. So
But he did not. He had nothing to say.
So by him not saying something, do you think in his mind in that moment, he made his decision?
I wondered that. I wondered if he purposely didn't say something.
Yeah, because he felt that.
Like, wow, what he just said, awesome. And if Lawrence truly didn't want it, if he truly had wanted to resign, I just thought in retrospect, he could feel good about leaving the church in this man's hands.
Sure. Because Lawrence throughout the film he's kind of trying to understand why it was him, why he was chosen as the one to oversee the conclave. Multiple times we hear him talk about it. Wow, and then I think later in the film, after sort of some events transpire, he does say that this is why he chose me to oversee the conclave. And in the end, he was the perfect man to do it because he was able to maintain stability. He was able to allow a platform where Benitez could arrive. Not necessarily particularly Benitez, but that the right person would be. I think the Pope knew that Lawrence would be the one that would make sure that the right guy would end up in the.
I agree with you. And look at he exercised a lot of integrity. Look at how he went into the Pope's room. The Pope that passed away, right before the movie starts, and he's the one who breaks the seal and goes into the room to find the evidence.
Yeah.
About Tremblay.
Right.
And finds out that Tremblay had been bribing people for their vote.
Right.
It's how he got Bellini's vote.
Yeah.
So it showed Bellini's ambition because he would have gotten a good position in Tremblay's papacy.
Sure.
Oh my. And if you had a guy that simply played by the rules or didn't have the level of integrity that Lawrence had, that information would not have come out.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
Perhaps you would have had Tremblay or Tedesco. So I think in that sense, he proved to be absolutely the right person. And to me, it showed, yes, he didn't turn down, when they asked him what would be your name, and he says it. But I thought that was, he really just wanted to get out what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I really admired that about him. And I
Yeah.
wondered if we were going to see at the end of the movie, like him take off his clothes and lay them down
Right.
and walk away as a civilian.
Boy, an interesting way to end it.
Didn't that? We just saw him looking out the window.
Yeah.
And but I thought he proved himself to be someone who had their heart in the right place and who had a really high level of integrity.
Yeah,
which was
absolutely.
absolutely needed in this particular nest of cardinal hornets.
Yes, integral
Yeah.
to the success of the conclave and
sure.
to the future of the Catholic Church. And you have to have a lot of conviction in that position. And you're right. You're absolutely right. Everything you said. I think I agree. He was the right guy for it. This is something watching this movie really made me think about myself and how I approach life and career and goals and things. I think that, listen, I want to believe that I have pure intentions in the decisions that I make and the pursuit of what I'm after in life. But then as an artist and as a director and as a writer, you have to have some level of self-interest. There has to be some level of what I have to say I think deserves ears.
Okay.
And I think that what I want some level of recognition for that. And I find myself being pulled a lot of the time between those 2 points of, listen, I came out to LA to pursue this dream because I want to tell stories that are going to impact people.
Okay.
And they're going to have an effect on people and that are going to make them look at themselves differently. And in that way, in a broader sense, have some sort of change and sort of knowing that I impacted someone in that way is very moving to me. And that's why I came out here.
I love that.
And why I do what I do. But there is, of course, as an artist and as a director, there's a part of me that wants recognition for that. Am I wrong in feeling that way? And am I just as bad as them?
When you say recognition, are you talking about awards and fame and glory and walk into a restaurant, oh, hello, Ryan, it's you, What kind of recognition?
Man, that's tough.
Sorry, because let me put it this way. Look, it is what you want to do and what you are doing is an artistic endeavor, and you seek to move people. You seek to reach people and to touch people and make them think and feel.
Yeah.
And at the same time, this is a business.
Yeah.
And unless you are recognized, most likely you're not going to reach people. So I think those things kind of go hand in hand. You need to get recognition in order for, for a distributor to buy your film, your product. I mean, you need to be recognized.
Yeah.
As, wow, this director is really fantastic, and he works really well with actors. Great, gets great performances, has a great vision. Works within budget, what have you, whatever that. I think that you're wanting to get recognition is actually important.
Wow. Okay.
I do.
Man.
I do. I think that's an important part of your role as a filmmaker. Go ahead.
No, I think I've never really had someone put it into that perspective for me. I appreciate you for doing that. I think it's made me look at it in a different light, from a different angle. Because you're right. I think me struggling to come to terms with wanting the recognition is my knowledge and understanding that that's bad. But
why? Why is that bad?
I think when people want to be artists for the wrong reasons, when people want artists to be artists for the recognition, when they want the fame, when they want the money, when they want, I think that, to me, and this is just my own personal opinion and value, but that's not genuine, and that's not. You're not a genuine, honest, truthful artist. You have
Okay. Yeah.
you have, as we talked about at the beginning, bad intentions. And I always felt that, man, I want this. I want to help people. I want to reach people. But you're right. Part of that, if nobody sees it,
That's
I didn't
right.
accomplish my goal.
Right.
So I need people to see it
Mm-hmm.
in order. So it's not that I have the wrong perspective. It's that I just wasn't seeing it how you said it.
Yeah, I think you got to cut yourself some slack, man.
Yeah, I got to be more.
You know?
Yeah,
Because really,
more
it's
patient with myself.
It's
man.
yeah, and also, I almost feel like you're putting a type of moral judgment on yourself,
Yeah.
and I think that is, you don't need to do that.
Sure.
You restrict yourself,
Sure.
because look, you know what your intentions are, so just make your good art, and then work to have it recognized.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's important.
You're absolutely right. I thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it, man. That I've never seen it from that perspective. So I think that opened up a new window
Yeah, because
for me there.
otherwise maybe you just make movies for your family. You know,
You're right.
Dad,
yeah.
I made this
Family and
movie for
friends.
you.
Yeah.
I really want to reach you, Dad.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And you
Definitely.
might, but I don't think that's your jam. I think you want to reach a broad audience, and I hope you do.
Let's come to you. Let's
Yeah.
turn.
I
the-
don't make films.
Let's turn the camera to you. Is there anything from your life that you think that you look at yourself and realize maybe I wanted, either you sought out power or recognition or wanted some sort of outcome and didn't have the purest of intentions?
What a question. Didn't have the purest of intentions. This is where I the way my brain works, like, well, what do you mean? Purest of intentions.
What are the purest?
And it's going to go into what we're going to discuss in another episode of our show.
Love that. Love that.
Intentions, because
Okay.
I think intent is massive. I think it's like the part of the iceberg you don't see under the water.
Mm.
And so have I had tried to position myself as something else and had intentions that weren't clear or weren't upfront?
Yeah.
Yes, but I will say this. As I get older, it happens less and less and less and less because I see the price one pays, at least I have paid personally, when my intentions don't match my actions.
Wow.
I can't think of specific things that I
No,
want
I
to
think-
tell the world,
Yeah.
but I will just say in broad terms, I have absolutely done that. And
Yeah.
and I've just seen that I have paid a price for that. I don't know if, who knows what it would be like for other people.
Sure.
Does
No,
that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that was a profound thing you said, that you're aware that your intentions did not match your actions, simply put.
Yeah.
And that in retrospect, as you've gotten older, you've had more experience, obviously, and you've been able to hopefully look back at the things you've done and the decisions you've made and understand, wow,
Exactly.
I wasn't.
Right. And in that sense, to me, what's more important is rather than weighing, is it a good or bad intention? I just want to be straight with myself, clear with my own mind,
Yeah.
what my intention
Yeah.
is,
Yeah,
and not give it some kind of value weight.
sure.
Moral value kind of weight. You can, but first I just want to assess, what are my intentions?
Yeah. Because it's subjective at the end of the day, isn't it?
Totally.
What is good and bad intentions to you might be different from me. It might be different from Joe
That's why
Schmo.
I've been kind of pushing back
Yeah,
on
yeah.
on the good part.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's fair.
Because it is a relative term, I think. I
Yeah.
mean, is there absolute goodness? Probably. I don't know that it comes from me.
Sure.
But
yeah, me either.
yeah. But what I like, Ryan, is that you are asking these questions. I think that's part of why we are friends,
Mm.
is that you are questioning yourself and looking at your own motivations and wondering about the motivations of others.
Yeah.
And you have, to me, intent to do good work. Good. There's that word again. You
Yeah.
want to do work that moves people. And I'm thankful for people like you that have that intention, rather, because I do know people. I grew up with this woman who she had an extraordinary life experience. Schizophrenia hit her while she was in college. She actually very bright,
Okay.
lived on the street for a time, had a really wild experience as a bag lady, is what it was called years ago. So she was a homeless woman, and she was in her early 20s.
Wow.
And she's very attractive.
Wow.
Very unusual circumstance.
Yeah.
And I met her again years later after she'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia. She'd been treated. She was doing really well. She is doing really well today,
That's
which
great.
is awesome.
That's amazing.
But she wanted to write a book, and one of the things she said to me was she wanted to be famous. Wow. And
Okay.
because she'd asked me to help her potentially with this book.
Yeah.
And as soon as she said that, I distanced myself from her.
Okay.
Because to me, there's a real big difference between wanting to tell your story and doing it in such a way that you're going to have high integrity with how you do it, versus I want to make a product that is going to make me well known. There's a very big difference there.
Comes right back to intentions.
That's right.
You're absolutely right.
And I've never heard you say, I just want to be famous and, fat stacks and,
And I guess
big old house.
well,
Hopefully you'll get those things,
by proxy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Through the good intention.
Through the intentions that you have to
Right.
create
Right.
beautiful art that moves people.
Right. I thank you so much for saying what you said. I really appreciate that. And it is interesting as we're kind of wrapping up this conversation. I'm wondering, how do we know for sure that Tremblay's intentions weren't good? Sure, he wanted power.
Here's part of
But-
why I think.
How do we know that he didn't want to do good with the papacy?
Um,
How do we know he wouldn't have been a fantastic pope?
who knows? He might have been, but I just think the way he was going about trying to be pope was underhanded. Like we were told from an outside source that the pope, before passing away, had asked Tremblay to resign.
Right.
When Tremblay was confronted with that by Lawrence,
Yeah.
he denied it.
Yeah.
You want that guy running the ship?
Certainly there's a lot of characteristics that make you go, I don't know.
And to some people, some types of character flaws are irrelevant. For me, that's important, personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tremblay, who knows? He might have been decent at it, but I just think he wanted the glory.
Yeah.
You know?
I think we're brought up. You hear so much, at least I did in my childhood and in my upbringing, that you don't judge people. And that's very sound advice to give. But I think that their advice was misguided. I think that you should judge people based on the content of their character. You should absolutely judge people. You should absolutely look at the way someone treats the people around them. Look at their intentions, how they go about, how they treat people, and make a judgment based on that. That is what you should do. Sure, you shouldn't judge someone based on, art, things that are surface level. But when you get to those deeper sort of characteristics of someone, judge away. Judge right away. You should. You absolutely should.
Here we are wrapping up, and that's something I could get into.
Yeah,
man.
that's how we leave
I
it,
could
huh?
really get into. The word judgment and what you are doing in judging someone.
Sure.
That's a discussion I'd like to have at some point.
Maybe a conversation for another pod.
Exactly.
We'll come across a movie that has judgment.
love that.
as the
Let's do
theme,
that.
And
All
then
right.
we'll discuss it there.
Yeah, I would love that.
So before
love
we get
that.
out of here,
Yeah, man.
let's give these people something to watch. Let's give them a list. Let's give them some movies and shows that they can watch that are related to Conclave and what it speaks about, and power and the pursuit of power. So here's a top 5 list of films and TV shows about the pursuit of power and the dangers that come with it. So the first is the 2007 film There Will Be Blood. I mean, yeah, I can't possibly bring this list out and not put that movie on it. That's number 1.
Right on.
Okay, and that could be found on Paramount Plus. Number 2, The Social Network, the 2010 film that's also on Paramount Plus. That's about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, the creation. Number 3, The Prestige. That's a Christopher Nolan flick from 2006. You can rent that, and boy, that's an interesting one. That's some magicians and their pursuit of power and wanting to be recognized as being great. Number 4 is a TV show called House of Cards on Netflix.
So good.
2013 show. You can watch that now. That explores the more political side that we were discussing earlier. And, well, there's some parallels there, huh? And then number 5 is Dune Part 2. It's a recent movie that just came out. Have you seen Dune?
It. Not yet.
Have you seen the first one?
Oh, yeah. Loved it.
The Denis version, not the
No.
David Lynch.
I've seen both.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
just not this one.
So you haven't seen Part 2 yet.
No.
So Part 1 really sets it up, the story of the characters. Part 2 is where you really start to get into the character and how he, what's his name?
Paul Atreides.
Paul Atreides, and how he, navigates his role and the power that comes with it. So you can find that on HBO Max.
Awesome.
How do we leave these people? What's the moral of the story, man?
The moral of the story.
We're gonna come full circle here. What have we learned from Conclave? What have we learned from Where There Will Be Blood? What have we learned from these movies and ourselves? Can you pursue power for purely good intentions? Ask yourself that. Think about that. Think about the people in your life who you see on the TV, and apply that and see what kind of answers you could find from there.
I like it.
Thanks so much for being here. What a blast.
Yeah, it was.
It's been fun as always.
Really enjoyed that.
Always been a great conversation. I appreciate you so much for how receptive you are and how intellectual you are and how you approach these topics, and sort of the answers that you give, I think, are very, very well thought out. And I think they make me think and make my gears turn. And I think that's why we're such a great,
Gotcha, man.
a great duo. So thank you. We'll see you again next time. As always, don't be afraid to take a step back. Take a look at the bigger picture. You're the main character of your own story, and the answers that you're looking for might be lying just beyond the frame. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.